straight A's or at least straight B's. But where you are right now is most important. That comes first. That being said, being able to be proactive and be forward thinking and always having the next step in mind. Not that you're not putting 100% in what you're doing right now, but having the next step in mind, whether it be that internship, that job, maybe a site visit or a networking event, something of that nature. So I took out a loan after my first year at GW, going into my second year, and it was hefty. The amount is really irrelevant. It was 5,000, but it was more the principle of it. I could have went home and worked some training job at a facility, made decent money, lived for free with my parents, family, etc. But I chose to take out a loan so that I could travel, do site visits, make phone calls, stay at GW as much as I wanted to, go home a little bit, but invested that money into 2 or 3 certifications and courses. Was able to stay at GW for the majority of the summer, I think July and August, to work with teams when I didn't have to be there. So again, just getting back to that expense versus investment. Now, I got to spend a few extra years paying off my student loans because of that. And by no means am I suggesting that that's something you should do. Avoid student loans as much as you can. But that's just another kind of example of the level of investment that I was willing to make. And I can tell you that it did pay dividends for me finishing up at GW and positioning myself for the future. And then lastly there, this isn't a brag, it really isn't, but just reflecting on it now, at the young age and the young point in my career I am, I was able to turn down 2 major job offers already. One came at about winter into spring of my second year at GW from a different professional baseball team. Would have forced me to leave GW early, so I turned that down. Logistically, it just didn't work. And then this past year, while I was at Louisville, had only been there a few months, and then had an opportunity to go to Division I basketball, which is kind of one of my dream jobs, coming from a basketball background, but turned that down just because I had just gotten to Louisville and I didn't want to leave, a blank slate or leave on the wrong note. So again, not a brag, but I can tell you that both of those opportunities came from phone calls. And I'm not saying that that's the way it should be, but just networking and meeting the right people and presenting yourself in the right manner, whether it be in person, over social media, which we'll get to next, site visit, whatever it may be, like things as simple as a handshake, a phone call, maybe even a social media exchange can lead to a job interview or a job offer. That's one of the biggest things. I think you can use it as an advantage or you can use it as a disadvantage, for our generation, our millennial generation, so to speak. And then just that quote at the bottom, that was something from a mentor at GW. Good things happen to good people, and I do firmly believe that. Last slide here. I want to talk about social media a little bit. I know I've rambled. Hopefully you guys are getting something from this, but I'll talk about social media, how I've used it, good and bad, hopefully mostly good, but how I think you guys can try to use it to your advantage. And then I want to open up for questions, challenges, concerns, and I'll kind of bring myself back to the screen and we can use the chat box, etc. So lastly here, to wrap things up, the power of social media. Most importantly, I think, is having a professional filter. Everybody in my field, I'm sure in every other field, is a little different on this. Some people use social media purely for marketing and self-promotion. And if that's your jam, that's cool, that's fine. I'm somewhere in the middle. Some people like to keep it completely personal, completely professional. I'm somewhere in the middle where I might have a picture out with my buddies, having a beer, and I am very careful with that. It's something I didn't used to do, and I wouldn't necessarily recommend it. But if you are of age, there's a big difference between having a picture out at dinner or a picture in a bar with a beer versus a picture out at a party doing something wild and crazy, right? Like, obviously those are 2 very different things, and hopefully you have some discretion to be able to determine which is appropriate and which isn't. As employers these days are very much so capable of using social media as a professional filter. But that being said, I do put some good professional content. Hopefully it's good, but I do put some professional related content. Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, not so much. I feel like that's more of just a friend directory nowadays, but Instagram and Twitter, I have athletes, I have friends, I have family, have the whole gamut. I'll put personal stuff and professional stuff, obviously using my discretion and an appropriate filter. Snapchat is the one thing I am careful with. I try not to add athletes on that. I don't add athletes on that, maybe a handful of former athletes, but Snapchat I kind of don't try to use in that type of way. But really, the power of it is free marketing. And it can be as powerful as you make it, for better or for worse, right? So if you want to hold a professional presence on Twitter, Instagram, whatever it may be, that's great. But know that if that is your audience, then you want to make sure you put the right content for that audience. If you just want it to be personal, then that's fine. But still knowing that employers may be able to use that information, keep it professional, keep it appropriate. And then just an example on that, my 5-year high school reunion, which was 2011, so 2016, it was about 2 years ago now, going on 2 years. I had people that I hadn't talked to literally in years, probably even since high school, that I was cool with back then, and would come up to me and say, "Hey man, it looks like you're doing some cool things. You're at GW or Louisville, whatever it was at the time. Seeing what you're posting, yada yada, it looks really cool. It looks like you're doing great." Those were people that I hadn't talked to. I had no idea what I was doing other than what I had put on social media. But that just shows you the power of it, that people that were across the state, across the country, were in tune with where I was at and what I was doing. So that was a pretty cool example of the power that it has. So that's really the majority of the content that I have. I actually went over 20 minutes, so I do apologize. We have about 15 minutes for questions, challenges, concerns, curiosities. Really, guys, I'm an open book. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen now. I'm going to just bring myself back to kind of the chat screen. You can either use the raise hand option, which I believe is at the bottom of your screen, if you have a question you want to ask, and then I can unmute you, and you can speak audibly, either through your phone or headphones, whatever it may be. So you can do that. Or if you just want to type a question, concern, curiosity, whatever it may be, if you want to type it in the chat box, we can do it that way as well, and then I'll just kind of pick it off one by one. Okay, so I hope you guys got something out of that. We have about 15 minutes. I'm going to take my screen share away, and then we'll get to Q&A. Okay. All right, looks like we got one from Thomas already. Thank you, Thomas. Thomas is asking, if you could go back knowing what you know now, would you accept one of those other job offers? It's a great question. It's a two-part question. I'll answer that first. No, I wouldn't. The one in professional baseball that came up at the end of grad school, it's a good opportunity. But really, I chose loyalty in that situation because the baseball team, I had 3 big commitments. I had 3 teams that were mine, that I oversaw. But baseball was a team that I had put the most time into, and that put the most time into what I had to offer them. We had a big senior class, and I had really committed to that senior class and to the coaching staff to stick it out through the end of the year. I could have finished my degree probably, but I had committed to them to stick it out. So no, I don't regret that. That same team actually was in play before the Dodgers even came up this past year, but I actually determined that the Dodgers was a better opportunity, so I actually turned them down again. So that situation, no. And the basketball situation that came up at Louisville, I don't regret that either because I wanted to finish what I started at Louisville. That was kind of a loyalty thing as well, and I didn't want to make a decision on a whim like that. And, there's no right or wrong answer to how to handle that situation, but what some of the feedback I got from my mentors when I was debating on that briefly was you don't want to be known as someone that is going to skip from job to job. Now, I've only been at places 1 to 2 years because I'm early on intern GA roles, but you don't want to be known as that person that's going to just leave your current role for the next role that looks better, because if it's a move up in pay or in HR terms, that's something that you have to decide that's best for you personally and professionally. But you don't want to be the guy that is with a girl and then leaves that girl for a hotter girl, right? Or vice versa, a girl leaving a guy. That was actually an example that someone gave me, so I thought that was valuable. And then second question from Thomas. Also, do you have the same type of passion working for the Dodgers now than you would if you worked for an NBA team? I know I'm a huge baseball fan, and if I worked in another professional sport, I'm not sure I would have the same passion for it. Another great question. In short, yes. What appealed to me about baseball was that it was something new. Not that I'm an expert in basketball or that basketball would come easy. That is my true passion, my first love. Basketball is what I know best because I played it. I thought I was going to go to the NBA from about fifth grade. That's all I played from fifth grade. So would the NBA be more exciting or more enticing? Maybe in the future. I hope to maybe get an opportunity sometime down the line. But no, baseball appeals to me a lot right now because it is different, because I don't know the game nearly as well. So some of the excitement and fulfillment I get out of that is just asking guys like, hey, explain this to me, or hey, this is what I know about the body and training, but tell me what you know about the game and what you need to work on, and how I can help influence that. That's something I honestly really enjoy about being with a sport that I don't know as well. Thank you for that, John. So that was Thomas again. New question from Jonathan. In regards to an elevator pitch, how do you apply that in everyday life? Professors always say that to have one, but in reality, life doesn't always seem to give you a 15, 20-second chance to impress someone. It is important to be proactive in finding people, like your example of taking the loan to network for the summer. Yeah, that's a great question, man. That's a great point. You don't always have 15 to 20 seconds. You might have 20 minutes. You might have 5 seconds, right? I think it's the initial person-to-person contact, just how you address somebody, how you present yourself for one, wearing appropriate clothing, being clean shaven. I have a beard, but I shaved below for this, just for this presentation, so I didn't look sloppy. Whatever your appropriate presentation is for your role, having the appropriate presentation and how you dress, how you present yourself. If it's 5 a.m., 6 a.m., 7 a.m. in the morning, not dragging into work and looking tired, acting like you want to be there. But just that initial eye contact that you make with someone, maybe if it's a handshake, that initial handshake that you make. But there's a big difference between saying, hey, I'm Chris, how you doing? Yeah, what's up? Versus, hey, how you doing? Nice to meet you, sir. Right? Like, that can make such a big difference. And then maybe that 5 second of an introduction will lead to 20 seconds of, oh, who are you? Where'd you come from? What's your role? Oh, okay, cool. Tell me more about that. Versus if you just, if you act like a dick or you act disinterested, you may not even get that opportunity. So I guess that'd be my answer to that. And then moving to Marlon, we have about 9 minutes left, guys. So I'm going to answer Marlon's question. And then please, anything else you have, send it in. I will share my personal information as well with email and all if you guys want to reach out. But Marlon said, thanks for having the time to do this. My pleasure. Thank you guys for listening to me. With school, internships, and part-time jobs, did you ever feel like giving up? What kept you going? Short answer, yes. Burnout is something that perhaps in you guys' area, probably in the world of sports in general, but particularly in strength and conditioning, burnout is a very real thing. And there were mornings, my first year at GW in the fall, when I was a couple months in, and the excitement of doing what I was getting to do every day wore off, and the nights of not getting enough sleep and staying up late, and that adrenaline wore off. And I remember there were mornings that I would wake up and I wouldn't want to go in. Now, once I got there, I was still happy to be there, was still excited and passionate about it. But there were days and probably a span of weeks that wore off, and I started to get concerned, like, I'm not supposed to feel this way. Is this what I want to do? But honestly, I think that's just where the work-life balance, the work-life balance, quote-unquote balance, comes back into play. Whether you want it to be a job, a career, or a lifestyle, which for me, I'm somewhere in between a career and lifestyle. I'm still figuring it out. But also, the second time I went through that was at Louisville. Great experience. Took a lot from it, but I wasn't a great fit with their staff. And they know that, I don't have reservations saying that. And there were mornings I didn't want to go in there just because I didn't feel like a good fit. I didn't feel like I got along with the staff there. And don't get me wrong, we had good professional relationships, and I have good, strong personal relationships with some of them. Respect all of them. But it just was not nearly as good of a fit. And so for that reason, even though I love the work, I love the athletes, I didn't love the people that I was around. It didn't feel like family. It just felt like work. It felt like business. So I think those two things, how much you want to be invested, how passionate about it you really are, and also finding the right organization. And one of the best pieces of advice I was given, and that I really feel confident about now, as I move forward with my career is when you're in a job interview, and this is harder as an undergrad where you're just trying to get any job or the best job possible. But when you're in a job interview, you're interviewing them, the employer, the organization, the team, whatever it may be, just as much as they're interviewing you.